Okay, so today we're going to continue on with our factoring section, which is review section 4. Today we're going to factor trinomials when the number in front of x squared, our a value, is going to equal 1. So if you think about factoring trinomials, it's sort of like the opposite of multiplication. So since the product of two binomials is usually a trinomial, when we factor our trinomials, we're more than likely gonna end up with two binomials. Now, always remember to look for a GCF first. So basically when we factor, we're doing FOIL in reverse. Now, once you factor it, I highly recommend that you FOIL your answer and make sure that it goes back to the original problem. So always check to see if there is a GCF first. If there is, you'll divide that out first, and then from there you'll factor what remains. Now, sometimes some of our trinomials might fit into a special pattern called the perfect square trinomial. And whenever you factor a perfect square trinomial, the answer ends up being a binomial squared. So again, what I mean by this is the same thing as saying x plus y times x plus y. Or if it's got a subtraction sign in the middle, x minus y times x minus y. Memorizing these patterns for the perfect square trinomials will benefit you later on, especially when you go to take the SAT. Being able to recognize the patterns will be very helpful. Pretty good so far? All right. So again, remember, after you factor, multiply your answers to check it, so FOIL it. The key thing to usually check is going to be the outer and the inner to make sure that it does give you that middle term. Usually first and last are going to be pretty obvious. So I know this one isn't a factor question. This is a multiplication question. So just to review, how to FOIL or to distribute, remember we would do first and get x squared. Then you do the outer and you get 3x. And then you do inside or inner, negative 1x. And then finally last and get negative 3. Remember, when you group the middle ones, you're going to be combining like terms here, and it'll become x squared plus 2x minus 3. So this is where we're going to have to find out what combination is going to add or subtract to give that middle term, depending on our signs. So let's go ahead and look at an example. Now, all of the examples that we're going to work out today are going to be in this standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c, where a, b, and c are just going to be integers. But our a today is always going to equal 1. On Wednesday, a will have another value. So today, all of our trinomials we're going to factor will have an a value of 1. So there are all different ways out there to factor trinomials. There's all kinds of cool tricks. So whatever technique you're going to use is fine with me as long as you can factor it. Now, you can do the guess and test method, where you would list the factors of this. So the only way to get an x would be I'd put an x here and an x here. And then the number that I'm going to place here are going to be the factors of negative 2. And the two ways that I can multiply to get a negative 2 are going to be 2 times negative 1 or negative 2 times positive 1. Both of these, when I multiply them, are going to give me a negative 2. But I have to figure out which one of these will subtract, because my signs are different, to give me the middle term. So I can see that I need to get a negative 1 here in the middle. So when I add this one, 2 minus 1, or 2 plus negative 1, I get 1. But if I do negative 2 plus 1 here, I get the negative 1 that I need. So the factors of negative 2 that I'm going to use are going to be the negative 2 and the positive 1. So here I would write negative 2, positive 1. And again, what you would do is you're going to FOIL it to see if it goes back to the original trinomial. So x times x is x squared, x times 1 is 1x, negative 2 times x is negative 2x, and negative 2 times positive 1 is negative 2. Again, group the middle, and you'll see if it goes back to the beginning. Now, my little trick for when I factor these, once I figure out the factors of this number, then I look to see which ones will add or subtract to give me the middle. Now, if my n number is positive, this tells me that the signs on my factors have to be the same. But if that last number is negative, the signs on my factors are going to be different because I need different signs to get a negative. And when the signs are different, the bigger number or the larger of my factors will get the sign of the middle. So let's try another one. Again, factoring is going to take practice. The more practice you do, the more automatic it's going to become. So let's try the next one. Again, our goal here, if we're going to guess and test, we would start out by putting the two factors of the first term. And then I now would list the factors of the last term. And then I would figure out which combination would give me a 5. Now notice the sign on the last number is positive. So this tells me that the signs on my factors have to be the same. And the signs that they're going to have is the middle sign. So notice it's a positive. So whenever your signs are positive, positive, both of your factors are going to be positive, positive. So let's list the factors of 6. So the factors of 6 are going to be 1 times 6. Now, if I didn't realize that my signs had to both be positive, I would have also listed negative 1 times negative 6. That will give me the positive 6, but when I add these two, I won't get a positive 5. Does that make sense? So really, I didn't need to list this one. The other way to multiply to get a positive 6 is going to be positive 2 times positive 3. Now, of these two combinations that are here with both positive signs, which one, when I add them, will give me the middle term, which is a positive 5? So if I do 1 plus 6, what do you get? 7. If I do 2 plus 3, what do you get? 5. So I can see that the two factors of 6 that I'm going to use are going to be 2 and 3. And again, you can FOIL it and make sure that it does go back. Yes?
Does it matter when you put the 2 and the 3?
No, that's a good question. So it didn't matter if you write x plus 3 or x plus 2. Either way, it doesn't matter the order of the binomials. Let's try the next one. Again, I'm looking for factors of 4 that will add, because it's plus plus, that will add to give me 5. So let's list the factors of 4. We can multiply to get a 4 by doing 1 times 4 and 2 times 2. Now again, remember, when this number on the end is positive, your signs have to be the same. And when you look to see what sign you're going to look at the middle sign. So if that middle sign was negative, then both of my signs would have been negative. All right, so let's go ahead and figure out which one of these, is it 1 plus 4 or 2 plus 2? That will give me the 5. And you can see that it's going to be the 1 plus 4. So my factors for this trinomial are going to be x plus 1 and x plus 4. Good so far? These are the easy trinomials. Now, look at the next example. Same exact numbers, but this time I changed the sign of the middle. So again, my end number is positive. So this tells me my signs need to be the same. And the signs that they're both going to have is the sign of the middle. So I'm looking for a negative, negative. So if I list the factors of 4, same ones that were up here, instead now they're both going to be negative. So when I multiply, I get the positive 4, but when I go back and add them, -1 plus -4, I get that -5 that I wanted in the middle. So here, my signs are going to be x minus 1 and x minus 4. Everybody good? Let's try another example. X squared plus 9x plus 8. Again, I am going to look at my signs. My last number is positive, so this tells me my signs are the same. So again, I'm going to look at the middle term. I can see it's plus, so this tells me that both signs are going to be positive, positive. I will now list the factors of 8 until I find the combination that will add to make 9. So 1 times 8, 2 times 4. And again, if I add these two, I get 9. If I add these two, I get 6. So the two factors of 8 that add to give me 9 are going to be x plus 1 and x plus 8. Believe it or not, the most obvious one is sometimes the trickiest one for some students. Because when the numbers get a little bit larger, they're thinking of, bigger combinations, and they always forget about 1 times the number for the factor. Believe it or not. So just be careful. And again, I always recommend you FOIL it back to make sure that you've got the right signs in there and the correct factors. All right. Now, this time, again, my last term is still positive, but now I'll look at the middle term. And this tells me that both signs will be negative, negative. So when there's a plus sign again on the end, so a plus sign on the end, we know that the signs are going to be the same. So it'll either be a positive, positive of your factors or a negative, negative, and the one that you choose is the sign in the middle. So again, let's list the factors of 16. So the factors are ways to multiply to get a 16. Now I have more than just 2 this time. And they're both going to be negative. So -1 times -16, -2 times -8, -4 times -4. And then I'm going to go back until I find the one that when I add them now, to see which one gives me -10. And I can see it's this middle one. So my 2 factors, my 2 binomials, x minus 2, x minus 8. Again, the last term is positive. Again, this tells me the signs are the same. And then I'm going to look to see what the sign in the middle is. It's negative. So I know my signs need to be negative, negative. So again, I'm going to list the factors of 39 until I find the one that will add to give me -16. So -1 times -39. It's an odd number, 2 won't divide in there. -3 times -13. Now, as soon as you find it, and a lot of these easy ones, you're not going to have to list them out. You're going to look at it and you're going to know what the answer is. So as soon as I get there, I could stop. So x minus 3 and x minus 13. Next, we're going to switch it up. Now, the next examples are going to have negative at the end of the trinomial. So now, again, when the sign on the end, so the sign on the last number, or the end, is negative, This tells me that the signs have to be different. So one's going to be positive, one's going to be negative. So now I'm going to list the factors of -4. So I could have -1 times 4. I could have +1 times -4. I can have +2 times -2. And now I'm going to go back until I find the one that when I add them, and in this case it'll be subtracting because my signs are different. So when I go ahead and combine these two, I get 3. Here I get -3, and here I get 0. Do any of these give me -6? No. So in that case, you would say that this is either prime or you can't factor it. So be aware that sometimes it just can't be factored. All right, so let's try our first real one that's going to factor that has a negative number at the end. So if you want to start and set up your binomials, you know one's going to have a plus sign, one's going to have a minus sign, and now I'm going to start listing the factors of -24. Now, a clue for me is, again, this sign in the middle. When I list my factors, my larger factor is going to have the sign of the middle. So for example, 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, 4 times 6. I'm going to put out of each one of these pairs, the sign in the middle is going to go on my bigger number. So I'm going to put a negative on the smaller ones, and now I'm going to go back through until I find the combination that when I add them gives me 5. But technically, because the signs are different, I'm subtracting. So this gives me 23. This one gives me 10. This one gives me 5. This one gives me 2. So I can see the factors that will work are going to be the -3 and the +8. So 8 and 3. Now, it's really when you hit these that you really should FOIL. Because let's say you put a plus 3 and a minus 8, this one would have the wrong sign in the middle when you FOIL it. Okay? So just be careful and double check the outer and the inner. So when you combine this, you get 8a. When you do this one, it's the -3a. And then when you combine them and you're subtracting them, you do get the +5. So whenever the last number is negative, really you're subtracting to get that middle term. Let's try another one. Now, I wrote 11 and 12 side by side because the difference between 11 and 12, the only thing I added in here was this y. So I just wanted to show you what we could do here to maybe simplify things if you've got a variable on both ends. Notice all the previous problems, there weren't variables on this last number. So let's go ahead and look at this one. Again, the last number is negative, so this tells me my signs are going to be different, one positive, one negative. And now I need to list the factors of 63 that when I subtract them will give me -2. So you could start listing 1 times 63, and again, my larger number of my factors will have the sign of the middle. 2 won't work. 3 will go in here 21 times. So then I keep going until I find the one that works, and it's actually going to be 9 times 7. And the bigger number is going to be the negative. So I'll put 7 here and 9 here. And then you could FOIL it and double check that it does go. So inner is 7x, outer is the -9x. Once you combine them, you do get the middle term. Now, notice on the other problem, everything was the same except for this y that I put in here. So really all I need to do is rewrite this And then I'm just going to add a y here and a y here. And then once I FOIL it back, it works. So just know if you've got a y squared or a z squared or something on the end, know that in your binomials, you would have two letters. Let's try another, and I think this is the last one. So again, same kind of scenario. We could factor this first as a squared minus 13a minus 48, if that's easier for you. So then again, we were looking for the factors of 48. And again, signs are going to be different. So 1 times 48, 2 times 24, 3 times 16. And as soon as you see it, stop. So I can do 3 and 16. And because it had the b squared here, put the b here and the b there. So that's all we're going to cover today, is when that leading coefficient, that number in front of your squared term, is a 1. On Wednesday, we will get into the more difficult trinomials and the perfect square trinomials. We'll factor those on Wednesday. So your homework that is listed for R.4c is not due until Wednesday. All right, so your goal tonight is to study for that first quiz. Okay, there is a study guide posted, so you're going to start working on that now. I will be posting a solution file for it, and then this worksheet is due on Wednesday. So tomorrow, after you take the quiz, your homework tomorrow night will be this worksheet. Yes?
If you run through the study guide, please, they should be pretty much good for the quiz.
Yes. Yeah, so if you've already looked at the study guide, let's go ahead and take a look at that.